"Don't you dare me," Jessica said, her finger still aimed at his chest, her voice slicing through the quiet murmur of Manhattan's finest, like steel through water. "I've had the absolute worst week of my life and I'm not afraid of you." Hey, beautiful souls, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into this absolutely wild story, I need to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, do it now, because what you're about to hear is the kind of story that'll have you talking about it for days. Now, let's get into it. 60 seconds earlier, Jessica Gibbs had been living her own personal version of hell. At 26, she was working her third double shift that week at the Summit, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, where the silverware cost more than her monthly rent. She was exhausted, broke, and surviving on caffeine and spite. Her student loans were 3 months overdue, her landlord had started leaving threatening notes, and her feet were bleeding inside shoes she couldn't afford to replace. She didn't have the patience for entitled billionaires. Not tonight. So when the man at table 7 snapped his fingers at her, actually snapped them like she was a trained pet, and then had the audacity to demand she bring him a bottle of champagne that wasn't even on the menu, while adding, "And make sure you smile, Bambina. You look far too serious for such a pretty face." Something inside Jessica Gibbs shattered. Not broke. Shattered. Like the champagne flute she'd been gripping so hard it cracked in her hand. She'd turned slowly, deliberately, the broken glass still in her palm, a thin line of blood trailing down her wrist. Every eye in the restaurant tracked her movement. "Excuse me?" she'd said, her voice dangerously calm. Celso Loggia looked up from his phone. At 34, he was the kind of handsome that felt like a threat, sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that could strip a person down to their secrets, an Italian accent that turned every word into velvet-wrapped steel. His black suit was immaculate, his presence suffocating. The 2 men flanking his table looked like they bench-pressed cars for fun. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "I said, bring me the Cristal Brut 2013. And smile. Is that too complicated for you to understand?" Jessica set down the broken glass very carefully on his table, right next to his $3,000 watch. "Let me explain something to you," she said, leaning in close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with danger. "I'm not your Bambina. I'm not your pet. I'm a human being who's been on her feet for 14 hours, serving people who think money makes them gods. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to speak to me with basic human respect, or you're going to get the hell out of my section." The restaurant didn't just go quiet. It went silent in that way that feels like the air has been sucked out of the room. Someone's fork clattered to their plate. In the kitchen, she could hear the chef whisper, "Oh my God. She doesn't know." Celso Loggia stood up slowly. He was tall, easily 6'3", and everything about him radiated coiled violence. When he took a step toward her, she heard the bartender gasp. "Do you have any idea?" he said, his voice soft as a blade being drawn from its sheath. "Who you're speaking to?" Jessica tilted her chin up. "Should I care?" His jaw tightened. "You should." "Well, I don't. And you know what else?" She jabbed her finger into his chest, actually touched him, which made both bodyguards reach for their jackets. "Don't you dare me. I've had the absolute worst week of my life. I'm not afraid of you, your bodyguards, or whatever crime family you're probably running out of this place. If you think I'm going to bow and scrape because you've got money and probably several felonies, you picked the wrong waitress on the wrong damn night." For 5 eternal seconds, Celso Loggia just stared at her. She watched something flicker behind his eyes, surprise, maybe, or curiosity. Then his expression smoothed into something cold and calculating. "You're fired," he said simply. "You can't fire me. You're a customer." "I'm not a customer." He adjusted his cufflinks with deliberate precision. "I'm the owner. As of 2 weeks ago, I own the Summit and 4 other establishments in Manhattan. So yes, Jessica, I can fire you." He pulled out his phone, never breaking eye contact with her, and pressed a single contact. "Marco." "Yes, I need you to handle something. His voice was casual, almost bored. Jessica Gibbs, I'm sending you her information now. I want her name flagged at every restaurant, hotel, catering company, and hospitality business we have connections with in the city. Blacklist, effective immediately. Jessica's blood ran cold. You can't. I just did. He ended the call and glanced at his watch. You have 60 seconds to collect your things and leave before I have you escorted out. And Jessica? He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than any shout. Manhattan is a small island, smaller when you know the right people. Or, in your case, when you've insulted the wrong one. Good luck finding work serving coffee, let alone champagne. The words hit like a physical blow. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. He wasn't just firing her, he was destroying her entire career with one phone call. Every door in the industry would slam shut. Every application would be mysteriously rejected. She'd be unhireable. But even knowing that, even feeling the panic starting to claw up her throat, she couldn't make herself apologize. Her pride was all she had left, the only thing that had kept her going through foster care, through nights sleeping in her car during college, through every humiliation this city had thrown at her. Fine, she said, yanking off her apron and throwing it on his table. But for the record, you're still an ass. And one day you're going to regret this. I doubt that, Celso replied, but there was something unreadable in his expression as he watched her. Jessica walked out with her head high, past the shocked diners, past the terrified staff, out into the Manhattan night where she had no job, no prospects, no future in the only industry she knew, and approximately $47 in her bank account. What Jessica didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that Celso Loggia was still watching her through the window, his expression unreadable, his mind already working on a plan that would change both their lives forever. Because in his world, people who showed that kind of fearless courage either ended up dead or became invaluable. And Celso Loggia had just decided which category Jessica Gibbs belonged to. 3 days later, when Jessica's phone was disconnected, her rent was overdue, and she'd been turned down from every single job she'd applied to, with no explanation given, she'd find herself staring at a business card that had been slipped under her apartment door. It simply read, Celso Loggia, with a phone number. And on the back, in elegant handwriting, call me when you're ready to stop being proud and start being smart. 3 days felt like 3 years. Jessica sat on the floor of her basement apartment in Queens, surrounded by rejection emails she'd printed out, just to prove to herself this was really happening. 23 applications. 23 variations of, we've decided to pursue other candidates, or the position has been filled, or her personal favorite, complete radio silence. She'd tried everything. Coffee shops in Brooklyn, a diner in the Bronx, even a hotel in New Jersey that required 2 subway transfers and a bus. The manager had looked at her resume, made one phone call, and suddenly remembered they weren't hiring after all. Celso Loggia's blacklist was real. And it was absolute. Her phone, the prepaid one she'd bought after her regular service got cut off, sat on the cracked linoleum like an accusation. Next to it, the business card. White, expensive paper, elegant script, a phone number that felt less like a lifeline and more like a noose. Call me when you're ready to stop being proud and start being smart. Bastard, Jessica muttered, but her voice cracked on the word. Her landlord had taped an eviction notice to her door this morning. Bright orange, impossible to miss. She had 72 hours to come up with $3,400 in back rent or she'd be on the street. Her bank account currently contained $31.17. Her student loan payment, already 2 months overdue, was threatening legal action. The collection agency called 6 times a day on her old number, which was probably why they'd finally disconnected it. She should hate herself for what she was about to do, but the thing about pride was that it didn't keep you warm at night, it didn't pay rent, and it definitely didn't fill your stomach when you'd been rationing ramen for 72 hours. Jessica picked up the phone, stared at the card. Put the phone down. This is insane, she said to the empty apartment. He destroyed your life. He's probably a criminal. He definitely has people killed. You're going to call him and what, say thank you? But what was the alternative? Homeless shelters? Moving back to where? She didn't have a home to go back to. Foster care didn't leave you with a safety net. It left you with survival instincts and the absolute certainty that the only person who would save you was yourself. Jessica picked up the phone again. This time, she dialed. It rang once. Twice. On the third ring, a male voice answered. Not Celso. Someone else. Professional. Clipped. Loggia Enterprises. I need to speak with Celso Loggia, Jessica said, proud that her voice didn't shake. Mr. Loggia doesn't take unsolicited calls. If you'd like to leave, tell him Jessica Gibbs is on the line. Tell him I'm ready to stop being proud and start being smart. She injected every ounce of sarcasm she had left into the words. He'll know what that means. Silence. Then, one moment. The hold music was classical. Probably Italian. Probably expensive. Jessica waited, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. 30 seconds. 45. A full minute. Then the music cut off and his voice filled her ear like smoke. Jessica, I was beginning to think you'd let pride kill you after all. Don't flatter yourself, she shot back. I'm not calling to apologize. Good. He sounded amused. I'd be disappointed if you did. Are you calling to beg? No, I'm calling to negotiate. A pause. Then a low laugh that made something in her stomach twist. Negotiate? You have nothing, Bambina. No job, no money, no options. What exactly do you think you have to negotiate with? My brain, Jessica said, and my complete inability to be intimidated by men in expensive suits. You said it yourself, I impressed you, which means you want something from me. So here's my offer. I'll work for you. But not as a waitress, not as some assistant who fetches your coffee. I have a degree in psychology from Columbia. I'm brilliant at reading people, and I'm desperate enough to work for a criminal, but smart enough to demand proper compensation for it. Another pause, longer this time. She could practically hear him recalculating. Columbia, he said finally. Psychology. Impressive. I assume you're buried in debt from it? That's none of your business. Everything about you is my business now. Where are you? Jessica's instinct was to lie. But what was the point? Queens, why? I'm sending a car. Be ready in 30 minutes. I didn't agree to... 30 minutes, Jessica. Unless you'd prefer to continue this negotiation from a homeless shelter. He hung up. Jessica stared at the phone, fury and terror warring in her chest. Then she looked around her apartment at the water stains on the ceiling, the mold growing in the corners, the eviction notice screaming orange from the door. She had 27 minutes to shower, change, and figure out how to negotiate with the devil without selling her soul. The car was a black Mercedes with tinted windows and a driver who looked like he could break her in half without breaking a sweat. He opened the door without speaking. Jessica got in because the alternative was admitting defeat. The drive took 40 minutes. Manhattan, Midtown, a building that was all glass and steel, and the kind of wealth that didn't bother being subtle. The elevator required a key card. They went up, and up, and up. Top floor. The doors opened directly into a penthouse office that had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And standing at those windows, silhouetted against the afternoon light, was Celso Loggia. He turned when she entered, still devastatingly handsome, still radiating danger. But this time, she noticed other things. The exhaustion around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set like he was bracing for battle. Jessica, he said, welcome to your job interview. I thought we were negotiating. Same thing. He gestured to a leather chair. Sit. I'll stand. His mouth twitched, almost a smile. Of course you will. Fine. Let's negotiate. I need someone I can trust. You don't trust me. You don't even know me. Exactly. Everyone in my world has an agenda, a loyalty, a price. You're an outsider. You're not connected to my business, my family, or my enemies. That makes you valuable. Jessica crossed her arms. What's the job? There's a traitor in my organization. Someone's selling information to my competitors. I need to find them before they destroy everything I've built. So hire a private investigator. I have. 3 of them. All failed. Because whoever this is knows how to hide. They know who to avoid, what to say, how to blend in. He moved closer. But they won't expect you. A waitress with a psychology degree who's too stubborn to die and too smart to miss details. You want me to spy for you? I want you to observe. There's an auction in 5 days. High stakes. Private. My entire inner circle will be there. You'll attend as my guest. Watch. Listen. Tell me who doesn't belong. Jessica's mind raced. And the pay? $50,000. 1 night's work. The number hit her like a physical blow. 50,000. That would cover her debts, her rent, give her breathing room to find legitimate work after the blacklist expired. If it expired, 100,000. She countered. Celso's eyebrows rose. Bold. You're asking me to walk into a room full of criminals and identify a traitor? That's not observation. That's suicide. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. 75. Final offer. Plus a designer dress, security, and my personal guarantee that no one will touch you. Your guarantee means nothing. In my world, Bambina, my guarantee is the only thing that matters. He extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Jessica looked at his hand. At his face. At the city spreading out behind him like a kingdom he owned. She thought about the eviction notice. The debt. The future that had been stolen from her 3 days ago in a restaurant she'd never see again. She took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and absolutely terrifying. We have a deal, she said. But don't call me Bambina. Celso smiled. A real smile this time, dangerous and beautiful and full of promises she didn't understand yet. As you wish, Jessica. Welcome to the most dangerous job you'll ever have. The dress cost more than Jessica's entire year of tuition at Columbia. She knew this because the boutique owner, a severe woman named Margot who looked like she'd been born wearing Chanel, had mentioned it 3 times while circling Jessica like a predator assessing prey. This is Valentino, Margot said, adjusting the midnight blue silk that clung to Jessica's body like it had been sewn onto her. Hand-beaded. One of a kind. Mr. Loggia has exquisite taste. Mr. Loggia has exquisite control issues, Jessica muttered, tugging at the neckline that plunged lower than she was comfortable with. The neckline is non-negotiable. Celso's voice came from behind her. Jessica spun around. He was leaning against the doorframe of the private fitting room, arms crossed, looking infuriatingly comfortable in a black tuxedo that probably cost more than the dress. His eyes traveled down her body slowly, analytically, like she was a puzzle he was solving. Do you mind? Jessica gestured at herself. I'm half naked here. I'm paying for the dress. I'm entitled to approve it. But he straightened, his jaw tight. Margot, give us a moment. The boutique owner disappeared instantly, which told Jessica exactly how much power Celso wielded. Even in a dress shop, people obeyed him without question. You look terrified, he observed once they were alone. I look annoyed. There's a difference. You're gripping the fabric hard enough to wrinkle it. That's fear, not annoyance. He moved closer, and Jessica fought the urge to step back. Having second thoughts? About taking money from a mobster to spy on other mobsters at what's probably an illegal auction? No, this all seems totally reasonable. She met his eyes. What exactly are we bidding on anyway? Art? Jewelry? Information? Nothing you need to worry about. His gaze dropped to her shoulder where Margot had left the price tag attached. He reached out, and Jessica went still as his fingers brushed her skin, removing the tag with careful precision. Your job is to watch people, not judge what they buy. Hard not to judge when I'm standing in a dress that costs more than most people's cars. Then it's a good thing you're not most people. He held up the tag, showing her the number. $47,000. You're someone who told a mafia boss to go to hell and live to profit from it. That's worth far more than silk and beads. Jessica's breath caught. Not at the price, though, that was insane, but at the way he was looking at her. Like she was something rare. Something valuable beyond money. She snatched the tag from his hand. If you're trying to make me feel special, it's not working. This is a transaction. I observe your criminal friends. You pay me. We never see each other again. Is that what you think will happen? That's what I'm going to make sure happens. Celso's smile was dark. We'll see. The auction house was in a building that didn't exist on any map. Jessica knew because she'd tried to look it up on the car ride over. The address Celso gave the driver led to what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse in the meatpacking district, but when they arrived, a hidden entrance opened to reveal an elevator lined with mahogany and gold. Subtle, Jessica said as they descended. Discretion and subtlety are different things. Celso adjusted his cufflinks, a nervous tell she filed away for later. Remember the rules? Don't speak unless spoken to, don't touch anything, don't make eye contact with anyone you don't recognize, observe everything. She recited them like a bored student. You do realize you're asking me to be invisible while wearing a $47,000 dress? I'm asking you to be forgettable. There's a difference. Nothing about this situation is forgettable. The elevator opened onto a scene that belonged in a movie. The underground space had been transformed into something between an art gallery and a cathedral, vaulted ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and at least 100 people in formal wear that collectively cost more than a small country's GDP. Waiters circulated with champagne. A string quartet played in the corner, and on raised platforms throughout the room, items were displayed under museum-quality lighting, paintings, sculptures, jewelry that caught the light like trapped stars. "Welcome to how the other half lives," Celso murmured near her ear, his hand settling on the small of her back. Jessica's skin burned where he touched her. "The other half? You mean criminals?" "I mean people who understand that laws are suggestions for those who can't afford to ignore them." He guided her forward, and she was suddenly aware of every eye in the room tracking their movement. "Smile, Jessica. You're supposed to be enjoying yourself. I'm supposed to be working. Do both." They moved through the crowd, and Jessica shifted into observation mode. A gray-haired man in the corner kept checking his phone, nervous energy, possibly expecting bad news. A woman in red laughed too loudly at her companion's jokes, performing "not genuine." Two men by the bar kept their backs to the wall, eyes constantly scanning security, either Celso's or someone else's. "The man at 9 o'clock, Jessica said quietly. "Older, expensive suit, keeps touching his wedding ring. He's uncomfortable being here." Celso didn't turn to look. "Marco Santini. He's always uncomfortable. His wife thinks he's at a business conference." "The blonde woman near the Rothko?" "Irina Volkov, Russian, art dealer, legitimate, surprisingly." "The bartender." This time Celso did glance over. "What about him?" "He's not actually making drinks. He's watching that table in the corner, the one with the 3 men who haven't bid on anything yet." Jessica took a champagne flute from a passing waiter, using it as a prop. Either he's security pretending to be staff, or he's exactly what I'm looking for. Celso's hand tightened on her back. "Explain." "He's memorizing conversations. Look at his eyes, they're tracking lip movements, not drink orders. And he's positioned himself at the only point in the room where he can see both exits and the main floor." She took a sip of champagne, mainly to calm her nerves. "Plus, he keeps checking his watch. He's either expecting something to happen, or he needs to report in soon." "Dio," Celso breathed. "You've been here 10 minutes. You hired me to observe." "I'm observing." Jessica turned to look up at him and found his face inches from hers, his dark eyes intense with something that wasn't quite admiration and wasn't quite hunger. It was both. What? Nothing. He stopped himself, jaw working. You're very good at this. At reading people? I had a lot of practice surviving people who wanted to break me. The words came out more honest than she intended. When you grow up in the system, you learn fast who's dangerous and who's just pretending to be. And which am I? Jessica held his gaze. Both. You're actually dangerous, but you're pretending you don't hate it. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe pain. His hand moved from her back to her wrist, circling it gently, his thumb finding her pulse point. Your heart is racing. That's fear. No, he said softly. That's the same thing I'm feeling right now. The air between them felt electric, dangerous. Jessica knew she should step back, put distance between them, remember this was a job. But his touch was warm, and something in his eyes made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced. Mr. Loggia! A voice cut through the moment. They both turned to find a tall man in a silver suit, his smile too wide, his eyes too calculating. I didn't expect to see you here tonight. Celso's entire demeanor shifted cold, controlled, dangerous. His hand dropped from Jessica's wrist but moved to her waist, a possessive gesture that made the other man's eyes narrow. Dimitri, Celso said, I didn't expect to see you breathing. Last I heard, you owed the Bratva $3 million. Jessica filed the name away. Dimitri. Russian, probably. In debt. Definitely nervous, despite the smile. All sorted, Dimitri said, but his hand twitched. Who's your lovely companion? None of your concern. Come now, Celso, we're all friends here. We've never been friends. The tension was sharp enough to cut. Jessica felt Celso's fingers press into her waist, a warning or a reassurance, she wasn't sure which. Then the lights dimmed, and a voice announced the auction was beginning. Celso leaned close, his lips brushing her ear. Stay close to me. Don't let anyone separate us. Understand? Jessica nodded, her pulse hammering for entirely different reasons now. This wasn't just an observation mission anymore. Something was very, very wrong. The auction lasted 2 hours, but Jessica barely registered the items, being sold a Caravaggio that went for $8 million, a necklace once owned by a murdered duchess, a briefcase whose contents were never described, but fetched $12 million from a man who bid by phone. She was too busy watching the bartender. He'd made his move 40 minutes in, slipping away during the bidding war over a Flemish masterpiece. Jessica tracked him with her peripheral vision as he disappeared through a service door. 5 minutes later, he returned, but his watch was missing. The expensive Rolex he'd been checking compulsively gone. Dead drop. Had to be. You're not watching the auction, Celso murmured beside her. The auction's not interesting. That is... She nodded subtly toward the bartender, who was now pouring drinks with slightly shaking hands. He left something in the back room. Probably a drive or a phone. Someone's going to retrieve it. Celso went very still. You're sure? Watch. Someone will find an excuse to go through that door in the next 10 minutes. They didn't have to wait that long. 7 minutes later, a man Jessica had noticed earlier, mid-50s, distinguished, the kind of face that belonged on corporate boards, excused himself from his table and headed toward the restrooms. But he took a wrong turn. Deliberately. Straight through the service door. Santo cielo, Celso breathed. That's Vincent Caruso. Friend of yours? My father's oldest associate. He's been with the family for 30 years. His voice had gone flat, emotionless, the tone of someone forcing control. Are you certain? Watch when he comes back. He'll have the watch or whatever was in it. 3 minutes later, Vincent returned. His hands were empty, but his jacket pocket bulged slightly where it hadn't before. Celso's jaw tightened until Jessica could see the muscle jump. I need to leave. Now. The auction's not over. Now, Jessica. He took her elbow, guiding her through the crowd with barely controlled urgency. People parted for him instinctively, sensing the danger radiating off him like heat. They made it to the elevator. The The doors closed, and the moment they were alone, Celso slammed his fist into the mahogany paneling hard enough to crack it. Jessica jumped. Jesus! 30 years. His voice was raw. He watched me grow up. He was at my father's funeral. He swore an oath. Another punch. Blood bloomed on his knuckles. Trenta fottuti anni. Stop! Jessica grabbed his wrist before he could hit the wall again. His hand was shaking, his breathing ragged. You're going to break your hand. I'm going to break his neck. But he let her hold his wrist, his eyes closed, fighting for control. Not here. Not now. She kept her voice calm, clinical. You need information first. Why he did it. Who he's working with. What he's already sold. Celso opened his eyes. They were black with rage, and something else, something that looked like devastation. You don't understand what this means. Then explain it to me. He took her to his penthouse, the same one where they'd negotiated her contract, but it felt different now, less like an office, more like a refuge. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed Manhattan glittering below them like scattered diamonds. Celso poured himself 3 fingers of scotch and downed it in one swallow, then poured another. You should probably slow down, Jessica said. You should probably mind your own business. You made this my business when you hired me. She took the glass from his hand before he could drink. Talk to me. Why does Vincent's betrayal hurt this much? Because he knows things that could destroy everything. Celso moved to the windows, his back to her. My operation, my legitimate businesses, my family's history. Every secret we've buried. That's practical. That's not personal. Jessica set down the glass and moved closer. Why does this feel like more than business? His shoulders tensed. Leave it alone, Jessica. No. She came to stand beside him, close enough to see his reflection in the glass. His face was a mask of controlled pain. Something else is happening here, something you're not telling me. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, quietly, his daughter's name was Sophia. The shift to past tense made Jessica's stomach drop. Was? She died 3 years ago. 16 years old. His voice was flat, dead. Human trafficking ring operating out of one of my warehouses. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know what they were using that building for. But it was my property, my responsibility, my negligence. Jessica felt the air leave her lungs. Celso. By the time I found out, it was too late. Sophia had been taken, sold, transported. We tracked her to a ship headed for Dubai. His hands clenched into fists. She jumped overboard before it docked, drowned herself rather than... He stopped, his jaw working. Vincent found out it was my warehouse, my oversight. I offered him everything. Money. Revenge against the men who ran the operation. My own life if he wanted it. He took the money for Sophia's funeral and told me we were square. But you weren't. How could we be? His daughter was dead because I was careless. Because I was so focused on expanding, on building the empire, that I didn't notice what was happening in my own territory. He turned to look at her, and his eyes were haunted. That night at the restaurant, when I snapped my fingers at you, called you Bambina, I wasn't trying to demean you, I was... He laughed bitterly. I was testing you. Testing me? To see if you'd submit. If you'd swallow your dignity for money. His voice dropped. The women in that trafficking ring, they were waitresses, students, people just trying to survive. And men like me snapped our fingers and they came running because they were desperate. I've hated myself for 3 years for not seeing it. For not protecting them. Understanding crashed over Jessica like a wave. You wanted me to tell you no. I needed someone to tell me no, to prove that not everyone can be bought or broken. He reached out, his bloody knuckles brushing her cheek. And then you did. You looked at one of the most dangerous men in New York and dared me to try you. And I knew, his voice cracked, I knew you were exactly who I needed. Someone who couldn't be corrupted. Someone who'd see what I've been too blind to see. Jessica's throat tightened. Vincent's not selling information for money. No. Celso's hand dropped. He's selling it for revenge. He's going to expose everything, destroy the family that destroyed his daughter. And I can't even blame him because it's exactly what I deserve. The weight of his guilt was crushing. Jessica could feel it pressing against her chest, making it hard to breathe. She thought about her own life, the foster homes, the abuse, the nights when survival meant swallowing pride and dignity. She understood revenge. She understood the desire to burn down the world that hurt you. But she also understood something else. "You can't let him do it," she said quietly. Celso's eyes snapped to hers. "What?" "He's in pain. He wants you to hurt the way he's hurting. But destroying your empire won't bring Sophia back. It'll just create more victims, more families destroyed, more people desperate enough to be exploited." She stepped closer, forcing him to meet her eyes. "You want to honor her memory? Then stop him, and then fix the system that killed her. Jessica, you don't get to wallow in guilt. You don't get to let him win because you think you deserve punishment." Her voice hardened. "You survive. You fight. And you make damn sure no one else's daughter ends up in the water." For a heartbeat, Celso just stared at her. Then he moved fast, decisive, his hands cupping her face as he kissed her. Not like the first time. This was desperate, raw, full of 3 years of pain and guilt, and the sudden, overwhelming realization that he wasn't alone in it anymore. Jessica's hands fisted in his jacket, pulling him closer, kissing him back with equal intensity, because she understood now. Understood his darkness. Understood why he'd hired her. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Celso pressed his forehead to hers. "Help me stop him," he whispered. "Not for me, for every Sophia who doesn't deserve this world." Jessica nodded, her decision made. "We stop him together." The call came at 3:47 a.m. Jessica was asleep on Celso's couch, or trying to be still wearing the Valentino dress because going back to her apartment felt like stepping into a previous life that no longer existed. The sound of Celso's phone ringing jolted her awake, followed by his voice from the bedroom, low and deadly. "When?" A pause. "How many casualties?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Brucia tutto. Leave nothing. Burn everything." Jessica sat up, her heart hammering. Through the open bedroom door, she could see Celso's silhouette against the window, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand clenched into a fist. He ended the call and stood there for a moment, perfectly still. Then he hurled the phone against the wall hard enough to shatter it. "Celso?" Jessica stood, moving to the doorway. He turned, and the look on his face made her blood run cold. Not anger. Something worse. Fear. "Vincent made his move," he said. "One of my warehouses, the legitimate one shipping operation, clean inventory, 23 employees." His voice was eerily calm. "Someone set a fire, locked the exits from the outside. They're saying 15 dead so far. More critical." Jessica's stomach dropped. Oh my God. It wasn't about the warehouse. It was a message. Celso moved past her into the living room, already pulling out a tablet from his safe. "He's telling me he'll burn everything I've built, everyone I employ. He's going from espionage to open warfare. Can you trace it back to him?" "He's too smart for that. The accelerant will be common. The locks will be untraceable. Even if I know it's him, I can't prove it." He pulled up security feeds, his fingers moving rapidly across the screen. "But he's not done. This is just the beginning." Jessica watched the footage, flames consuming the building, firefighters arriving too late, people being carried out on stretchers. "What's his endgame?" "Me. Dead or destroyed, doesn't matter which." Celso's jaw tightened. "He'll leak information to my rivals, to the FBI, to anyone who'll listen. He'll sabotage operations, and he'll kill anyone close to me until I'm completely isolated." He looked up at her, and his eyes were haunted. "Which means you need to leave, now." "Excuse me? I'm putting you on a plane to somewhere he can't find you. Switzerland, maybe. The Caymans. You'll have security, money, everything you need until this is over. Jessica laughed a sharp, incredulous sound. Are you insane? I'm trying to keep you alive. I didn't take this job to quit before the final curtain, boss. She crossed her arms. You hired me to find the traitor. I found him. Now you need me to help stop him. Jessica. No, listen to me. She moved closer, forcing him to meet her eyes. Vincent knows you. He knows how you think, how you operate, who your people are, but he doesn't know me. I'm not part of your world. I'm not predictable. That makes me the only advantage you have. It also makes you a target. I've been a target my entire life. Foster care, abusive boyfriends, poverty, I'm still here. I survived all of that. I can survive this. Celso's control was fracturing. She could see it in the way his hands shook, the way his breathing had gone shallow. You don't understand what you're saying. Vincent won't just kill you. He'll make it hurt. He'll make me watch. He'll use you to break me. Then don't let him. Jessica grabbed his face, forcing him to focus. You said you needed someone who couldn't be corrupted. Someone who'd tell you the truth. Here's the truth. If you send me away, you lose. Because you'll be so busy trying to protect me that you won't see the next attack coming. But if I stay, if we work together, we might actually survive this. Might. His voice was raw. That's not good enough. It's all we've got. For a long moment, they stood there, inches apart, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Then Celso's hand came up to cover hers, where it rested against his cheek. If something happens to you, it won't. If it does, he insisted, I won't forgive myself. I'll burn the whole city down. Do you understand? There won't be anything left. Jessica felt something crack open in her chest. No one had ever cared about her survival like this. No one had ever looked at her like she was worth burning the world for. Then, we make sure nothing happens to either of us, she said quietly. Celso pulled her closer, his forehead pressing against hers. Why won't you run? Any sane person would run. I stopped being sane the moment I told a mafia boss to go to hell. She smiled despite everything. Besides, you're paying me $75,000. I don't quit jobs that pay that well. He laughed, a broken, desperate sound. You're insane. So are you. That's why this works. His hands moved to her waist, holding her like she was the only solid thing in a collapsing world. I can't lose you. Not after... He stopped himself. After what? After finally finding someone who sees me, not the boss, not the criminal, not the monster, just me. His voice dropped to a whisper. You're the only person who's looked at me in 3 years and seen something worth saving. Jessica's throat tightened. She thought about her own life, how invisible she'd been, how many times she'd been looked through instead of seen. And here was this dangerous, complicated man telling her that she mattered, that her existence made a difference. You're not a monster, she said. Monsters don't feel guilt. They don't try to fix their mistakes. They don't, her voice caught. They don't care if waitresses live or die. Celso's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. Promise me something. What? If it comes down to choosing between stopping Vincent and saving yourself, you choose yourself, always. Celso. Promise me, Jessica, please. She looked into his eyes and saw the fear there, the absolute terror of caring about someone in a world where caring was a death sentence. I promise, she lied, because they both knew the truth. They'd already chosen each other over survival. The moment she'd refused to leave, the moment he'd told her his darkest secret, they were in this together now, and neither of them was walking away. Celso kissed her again, slower this time. Less desperate, more deliberate. A vow sealed in contact, in shared breath, in the acknowledgement that they were probably going to die, but at least they wouldn't die alone. When they broke apart, his expression had shifted. Still afraid, but focused, determined. If you're staying, we do this my way, he said. What way is that? Full transparency. You get access to everything, my security feeds, my communications, my people. You see something wrong, you tell me immediately. No hesitation. Agreed. And you wear a tracker? Always. If something happens, if you're taken or hurt, I need to know where you are within seconds. Jessica nodded. What else? We find Vincent before he finds us. And we end this. His voice went cold. Permanently. Meaning? Meaning, I'm going to give him the chance to walk away, to disappear with enough money to live comfortably for the rest of his life. Out of respect for what he's lost. Celso's expression hardened. But if he refuses, if he comes after you or anyone else, I'll do what I should have done 3 years ago. I'll put him down like the threat he's become. Jessica had spent her entire life believing in second chances, in rehabilitation, in the possibility of redemption. But looking at Celso now, at the man who'd carried 3 years of guilt, who'd hired her not in spite of her defiance but because of it, who was willing to burn the city down to keep her safe, she understood something fundamental. Some threats couldn't be negotiated with, some wounds were too deep to heal, and sometimes survival meant making choices that would haunt you forever. Then let's end it, she said. Celso pulled out his phone, a backup he kept in the safe, and started making calls. Jessica watched the sun rise over Manhattan, painting the city in shades of blood and gold. Somewhere out there, Vincent was planning his next move. But for the first time in 3 years, Celso wasn't facing the threat alone. And that changed everything. The safe house was in Brooklyn. Not the gentrified parts with artisan coffee shops and yoga studios, but the industrial stretch near the Navy Yard where buildings were abandoned and questions weren't asked. It was perfect, in other words, for people who didn't want to be found. The apartment itself was surprisingly nice, clean, furnished with basics, stocked with enough food for a week, but it felt like a cage, bulletproof windows that didn't open, one entrance, one exit, 4 security cameras covering every angle, a panic room disguised as a closet. Jessica hated it immediately. How long are we staying here? She asked, dropping her bag, a new one, since she hadn't been allowed back to her apartment. Everything she owned now had been purchased by Celso's people in the last 12 hours. Until Vincent makes contact or makes a mistake. Celso was checking the perimeter, his phone in one hand, a gun in the other. My people are monitoring his accounts, his movements, his known associates. The moment he surfaces, we'll know. And if he doesn't surface, he will. Men like Vincent, when they commit to revenge, they can't stop themselves. It becomes an obsession. He holstered the gun and finally looked at her. Are you hungry? I'm exhausted. There's a difference. Sleep then. Take the bedroom. I'll stay out here. Jessica laughed. You haven't slept in 2 days. Your hands are still shaking from the adrenaline crash. You need rest more than I do. I need to keep you safe. You have 4 armed guards outside and enough security tech to monitor a small country. I think we're okay for a few hours. She pointed at the couch. Sit down before you fall down. For a moment, she thought he'd argue. Then his shoulders sagged slightly, the first sign of weakness she'd seen from him, and he sat, heavily, like a puppet with cut strings. Jessica moved to the kitchen, found the coffee maker, and started brewing a pot. When was the last time you ate? I don't remember. That's not healthy. Nothing about this situation is healthy. But when she brought him a sandwich from the fridge, probably left by whoever stocked the place, he ate it mechanically, like his body was running on autopilot. She sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Outside, the winter sun was setting, painting the industrial wasteland in shades of orange and gray. Tell me about Vincent, she said quietly. Before Sophia, before everything went wrong, what was he like? Celso was quiet for a long moment. Then, kind, patient. He taught me how to tie a tie when my father was too busy. Came to my high school graduation when my mother was too drunk. He was, his voice caught, he was the best of us. The one who proved that working in this life didn't mean losing your humanity. And now? Now he's proof that even the best of us can break. Celso set down the sandwich, half-eaten. I keep thinking about what you said, about stopping him so no one else gets hurt. But what if the kindest thing is to let him win? Let him destroy me? Maybe that's what justice looks like. Justice would be saving Sophia. Since we can't do that, justice is making sure her death means something. Jessica turned to face him fully. You want to honor her? Build something better. Use your resources, your power, your connections to actually help people instead of just feeling guilty about failing them. You make it sound simple. It is simple. It's just not easy. She hesitated, then added, I used to think people like you were irredeemable, that once you crossed certain lines you couldn't come back, but maybe redemption isn't about erasing what you've done. Maybe it's about what you do next. Celso looked at her like she'd said something profound instead of just obvious. How are you this wise at 26? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of watching people destroy themselves over things they can't change. She stood, needing to move, to do something other than sit in the suffocating tension. I'm going to check the perimeter, make sure your security team didn't miss anything. Jessica, they're professionals. So was I. Different skill set. She was already moving toward the windows, studying the sight lines, the escape routes, the structural vulnerabilities. That's when she noticed it. The fire escape outside the bedroom window rusted, unstable looking. Nothing unusual for an old Brooklyn building, but there was something off about the bolts securing it to the brick. They were newer than the rest of the structure, recently installed, but deliberately made to look old. Celso, she said slowly. Come here. He was beside her in seconds. What is it? That fire escape, does it show up on your security blueprints? He pulled up the schematic on his phone. Yes. Original to the building, 1970s construction. Those bolts aren't from the 70s. Look at the threading, it's modern. And the rust is surface level. Someone wanted it to look old, but they replaced it recently. Her heart was racing now. Why would someone replace a fire escape on an abandoned building and make it look decrepit? Celso's expression darkened. Because they want an entry point that looks too dangerous to use, something we'd dismiss as structurally unsound. But it's actually solid, which means this safe house isn't safe. He was already moving, grabbing his phone, issuing rapid orders. Marco, we're compromised, I need... The lights went out. Complete darkness. Then, a second later, emergency lighting kicked in, dim, red-tinted. Enough to see shapes but not details. Backup power, Celso said, his voice deadly calm. He had his gun out again. Jessica, get to the panic room. Now. What about... Now. But before she could move, his phone buzzed. A text message. Celso read it, and the color drained from his face. What? Jessica demanded. He showed her the screen. Pier 47, 1 hour. Come alone or I start with your legitimate businesses, then your people, then your pretty waitress. V. It's a trap, Jessica said. Obviously. You can't go. I have to. Celso was already checking his weapon, his movements efficient and practiced. He's given me no choice. If I don't show, he'll burn everything I've built. Everyone who depends on me for their livelihood. I won't let more people die because of my mistakes. Then I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. Celso. No. He grabbed her shoulders, his grip almost painful. This is not negotiable. You stay here. You lock yourself in the panic room. If I'm not back in 3 hours, you call this number, he pressed a card into her hand, and you disappear. New identity, new life, far away from New York, and everything connected to me. I'm not leaving you to die. You promised you'd choose yourself. Remember? His eyes were fierce, desperate. Keep that promise, Jessica, please. He kissed her hard, fast, final, and then he was gone, disappearing through the door with 3 of his guards, leaving one behind to ensure she stayed put. Jessica stood in the red emergency lighting, fury and fear warring in her chest. She'd lied about the promise, and she was about to prove it. 20 minutes later, Jessica emerged from the bathroom window, the one spot the remaining guard couldn't see from his position. The fire escape held her weight perfectly, just as she'd suspected. She left a note on the counter, knowing Celso would find it eventually. I didn't take this job to let you die alone. Also, you're not the only one who's good at traps. Try not to get shot before I get there. J. She'd memorized the address. Pier 47, abandoned shipping terminal on the East River. She had no weapon, no backup, and no plan beyond, don't let Celso die. But she'd spent 26 years surviving impossible situations. One more wouldn't kill her. Probably. Pier 47 looked like a graveyard for ships. Rusted containers stacked like crooked tombstones, cranes frozen mid-reach like skeletal hands, and everywhere the smell of salt water and decay. The kind of place where people disappeared and no one asked questions. Jessica approached from the south side, keeping to the shadows between containers. She could see Celso's SUV parked near the main warehouse entrance, black, sleek, wrong for this environment. Bait, obviously. Vincent wanted Celso to know this was a trap, wanted him to come anyway. And he had. Because that's what guilt made you do. It made you walk into your own execution thinking you deserved it. Jessica crept closer, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her teeth. She had no weapon except a tire iron she'd grabbed from an abandoned car 3 blocks away. Against trained killers, it was basically useless. But she'd been useless before. She'd survived anyway. She made it to a vantage point behind a shipping container and peered around the edge. What she saw made her blood freeze. Celso was in the center of the warehouse floor, lit by a single overhead work light that turned everything into harsh shadows. He wasn't alone. 6 men surrounded him, armed, positioned at strategic points. And standing directly in front of him, looking 20 years older than his photograph, was Vincent Caruso. You came, Vincent said. His voice carried in the empty space, tired, bitter, broken. You knew I would. Celso's hands were visible, empty, surrendering. I'm sorry, Vincent. For Sophia. For everything. I've been sorry for 3 years. Your sorry doesn't bring her back. No, nothing brings her back, but killing me won't either. Maybe not. Vincent pulled out a gun, casual, practiced. But it'll make me feel better. Jessica's hand tightened on the tire iron. She needed a plan. Then she noticed it. The electrical panel on the far wall, half hidden behind debris. The same type of panel she'd seen in 1,000 restaurant kitchens, 1,000 basements, 1,000 places where the infrastructure was old and dangerous and held together with hope and violations of building codes. The same type that had a master shutoff that, if triggered incorrectly, would cause a cascading failure in the emergency lighting system. She'd seen it happen once when a cook had grabbed the wrong switch during a power outage. Every alarm in the building had gone off. Simultaneously fire, security, everything. Complete chaos for 90 seconds until someone figured out the reset sequence. 90 seconds might be enough. Jessica moved, staying low, circling around to reach the panel. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip the tire iron. I loved you like a son, Vincent was saying, and his voice cracked. When Sophia died, I thought about killing you then. Would have been cleaner. Faster, but I wanted you to suffer first. Wanted you to lose everything like I lost everything. Then do it, Celso said quietly. I'm not going to fight you. You've earned this. No! The word burst from Jessica before she could stop herself. Every head turned. Every gun swung toward her position. Jessica? Celso's voice was raw with horror. What are you? Sorry, boss, she called out, then slammed the tire iron into the electrical panel with everything she had. But I don't quit before the final curtain. The panel exploded in a shower of sparks. For 1 perfect second, nothing happened. Then every alarm in the terminal went off at once. Fire alarms, security alarms, emergency lights strobing red and white. The sound was deafening, disorienting, turning the warehouse into a hellscape of noise and chaos. Vincent's men spun, trying to locate the threat, their training warring with confusion. And in that moment of distraction, Celso moved. He was on the nearest gunman before the man could react, disarming him with brutal efficiency and using his body as a shield. 2 shots fired wild, missing. Celso returned fire with the stolen gun, dropping one attacker, then another. Vincent was screaming something, but Jessica couldn't hear over the alarms. She saw him aim at Celso, saw his finger tighten on the trigger. She threw the tire iron. It wasn't a good throw, it wasn't even close to accurate, but it hit Vincent's shoulder hard enough to ruin his aim. The shot went wide, sparking off a metal beam. Then everything became violence. Celso's remaining guards burst through the entrances they'd been waiting for his signal, and the alarms had been close enough. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Jessica dropped behind a crate, covering her head, trying to make herself as small as possible. She heard footsteps. Heavy. Running toward her. She looked up and saw one of Vincent's men, his gun aimed directly at her face. His finger was on the trigger. She was going to die. Then Celso appeared behind him like a demon, his arm wrapping around the man's throat, twisting. There was a terrible crack. The man dropped. Celso grabbed Jessica, hauling her up, his hands running over her body, checking for wounds. "Are you hurt? Did they—" I'm fine. You're insane. You could have been killed." "So could you." She grabbed his jacket. "Where's Vincent?" Celso's expression darkened. He pointed. Vincent was on the ground 30 feet away, bleeding from his leg, one of Celso's guards standing over him with a gun to his head. The fight was over. Celso's men had won, but the look on Vincent's face wasn't defeat. It was relief. Celso approached slowly, his gun still drawn. Jessica followed, unable to stop herself. "Do it," Vincent said. Blood pooled beneath him, but his eyes were clear. "End it, please." Celso stood over him, the gun steady in his hand. For a long moment, no one moved. The alarms were winding down now, the emergency systems realizing there was no actual fire. The silence that followed felt heavier than the noise. "No," Celso said finally. Vincent's face crumpled. "Celso, you don't get the easy way out. You don't get to die and make me the monster you think I am." Celso lowered the gun. "You're going to live. You're going to prison, federal, clean, safe. And you're going to spend every day of your sentence in a cell I'm paying for, being protected by guards on my payroll, thinking about the fact that I didn't kill you. That I chose mercy when you chose murder." "That's not mercy," Vincent spat. "That's torture." "Yes," Celso agreed. "It is. But it's the torture you've earned. And maybe after 10 or 20 years, you'll understand that Sophia wouldn't have wanted this. Wouldn't have wanted you to become the thing that destroyed her." Vincent's sob was animalistic, broken. "You don't get to use her name. Neither do you. Not anymore." Celso turned to his guards. "Get him medical attention. Then call my attorney. I want him processed correctly. No disappearances. No accidents. This goes through the system." As they hauled Vincent away, still sobbing, Jessica stood frozen. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving her shaking and cold. She'd almost died. Celso had almost died. Everything had almost ended. But it hadn't. Celso turned to her, and the expression on his face was incandescent with fury and relief, and something that looked like worship. "You threw a tire iron at an armed man," he said. "It worked, didn't it? You could have been killed. So you keep saying—" Jessica's voice was shaking now, the fear finally catching up. "But I wasn't. We weren't. We—" He kissed her before she could finish, pulled her into his arms and kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. His hands were in her hair, on her back, everywhere at once, confirming she was real and alive and whole. Jessica kissed him back with equal desperation, her fingers digging into his jacket, holding on like he might disappear if she let go. She tasted blood, his or hers. she didn't know, and salt from tears she didn't remember crying. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Celso pressed his forehead to hers. "Don't ever do that again," he whispered. "Do what? Save your life?" "Scare me like that. I thought when I saw you—" His voice broke. "I thought I'd lost you before I ever really had you." Jessica's hands came up to cup his face, feeling the stubble, the warmth, the proof of survival. "You have me. I'm here. We're both here." "Jessica." "I know." She did know, could feel it in the way he held her, the way he looked at her. "Me too." Around them, his men were securing the scene, calling for cleanup crews, erasing evidence of what had happened here. But in this moment, none of that mattered. They'd survived. Together. And that changed everything. The penthouse felt different now, less like a fortress, more like a sanctuary. Jessica stood at the kitchen island, organizing the first aid supplies Celso's people had left. Her hands were still trembling aftershock from the adrenaline, from nearly dying, from watching Celso almost execute a man who'd been like a father to him. Behind her, she heard the shower turn off. A moment later, Celso emerged wearing only dark slacks, his chest bare, hair still damp. In the soft lighting, she could see the full map of his life written on his skin. Old scars, new bruises, the evidence of a man who'd survived through violence. "Sit," she said, pointing to the bar stool. "I'm fine. You're bleeding through your shirt. You were bleeding through your shirt. Now you're just bleeding. Sit down." He obeyed, which told her exactly how exhausted he was. Celso Loggia didn't take orders from anyone. Except, apparently, from her. Jessica moved behind him, assessing the damage. A gash on his shoulder blade, probably from when he'd used the container for cover. Bruised ribs, scraped knuckles. Nothing life-threatening, but enough to hurt. "This is going to sting," she warned, pressing an alcohol-soaked pad to the cut. He didn't flinch. "I've had worse." "That's not comforting." She worked in silence for a moment, cleaning the wound with careful precision. The intimacy of touching him like this, not in passion but in care, felt more vulnerable than anything they'd done before. "When I was 12, she said quietly, "I was in a foster home with this kid named Marcus. He was 16, angry at the world, and he took it out on anyone smaller than him. One night he cornered me in the kitchen. Told me he was going to teach me my place." Celso's shoulders tensed. "Jessica." "I grabbed a kitchen knife and told him if he touched me, I'd make sure he never touched anyone again." She smoothed a bandage over the cut. He backed down. "But I didn't sleep for 3 weeks after that. Kept the knife under my pillow, kept thinking about how close I'd come to actually using it." "What happened to him?" "Juvie, eventually. Assaulted another kid." She moved around to face Celso, meeting his eyes. "My point is, I understand what you did tonight. Not killing Vincent when you had every reason to. That took more courage than pulling the trigger would have." Celso's hand came up to catch hers. "I wanted to kill him. Every instinct I have screamed to end it. End him. But you didn't. Because you were watching." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "Because you'd just risked your life to save mine, and I couldn't prove you wrong about me. Couldn't become the monster you'd decided I wasn't." Jessica's throat tightened. "I never thought you were a monster." "Yes, you did, that first night, when I fired you, when I blacklisted you. You thought I was exactly what I looked like, a cruel, entitled criminal who destroyed people for sport." He pulled her closer, positioning her between his knees. "And you were right. That's exactly what I was becoming. What I'd been for 3 years. Celso, let me finish." His voice was raw. "After Sophia died, after Vincent took the money and walked away, I convinced myself I deserved to suffer. So I made myself into something that would guarantee suffering. I treated people like property. I tested them, pushed them, waited for them to break so I could confirm that everyone was corruptible, that I wasn't uniquely terrible, the whole world was." Jessica's hands came up to frame his face. "And then I walked into your restaurant, "And then you walked into my restaurant," he echoed. "And I did what I always did, snapped my fingers, made a demeaning request, waited for you to submit. But you didn't. You got angry. You got brave. You looked at me like I was just a man behaving badly, not a monster you had to fear." His voice dropped to barely a whisper. "And when you said, 'Don't you dare me,' I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years." "What?" "Hope." His eyes were bright with unshed tears. Hope that maybe there were still people in the world who couldn't be broken. That maybe I hadn't destroyed everything good by being careless. That maybe I could be something other than the guilt eating me alive. Jessica felt her own tears spilling over. "You fired me. You ruined my life. I needed you desperate. Needed you to have no choice but to work for me. Because I knew the moment you walked out of that restaurant that you were the only person who could save me from myself." He stood, pulling her fully against him. "I'm not a good man, Jessica. I've done terrible things. I'll probably do more terrible things before this life is over. But with you," his voice broke, "with you I want to be better. Want to use this power, this money, this empire, for something that would make Sophia's death mean something." "Then do it," Jessica whispered. "We'll do it together. I don't deserve you." "Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway." She managed a watery smile. "I didn't throw a tire iron at an armed man just to let you wallow in self-pity." Celso laughed a broken, beautiful sound. Then he kissed her, and it was different from every other kiss they'd shared. Not desperate, not passionate, just profound. A promise sealed in contact. When he pulled back, his eyes searched hers. "Stay with me. Not for tonight, not for the job. Stay with me." "As what? Your employee? As my partner. My equal. The person who calls me on my bullshit and keeps me human." His hands slid up her arms, her shoulders cradling her face. "The person I choose. Every day. For as long as you'll have me." Jessica's heart was hammering. This was insane. She barely knew him. He was a criminal. This would probably end in disaster. But when had she ever chosen the safe option? "Okay," she said. "Okay? I'll stay. I'll be your partner. She took a shaky breath. "I'll choose you back. Every day. Even when you're impossible and controlling and probably committing felonies." Celso's smile was incandescent. He lifted her onto the counter, positioning himself between her legs, his hands everywhere at once, her face, her hair, her waist. "I love you," he said, the words tumbling out like a confession. "I know it's too soon. I know we've only known each other for days. But I love you. I've loved you since you told me to go to hell in front of a restaurant full of people." Jessica felt something break open in her chest, every wall she'd built, every defense mechanism, every instinct that told her loving someone was dangerous. "I love you too," she whispered. "You insane, complicated, guilt-ridden criminal. I love you." He kissed her again, and this time when his hands moved to the hem of her shirt, she didn't stop him. When he lifted her and carried her to the bedroom, she wrapped her legs around his waist and held on. When they came together finally, desperately, two broken people finding wholeness in each other, it felt less like sex and more like salvation. Later, much later, they lay tangled in sheets that cost more than Jessica's former life, the city lights painting patterns on the ceiling. Celso's hand traced lazy patterns on her spine. "I meant what I said. About being partners. I want you involved in everything, the legitimate businesses, the foundation we're going to build. All of it." "What foundation?" "The one you're going to make me create. For trafficking victims. For people like Sophia who need someone to fight for them." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You're going to be the executive director. You're going to take my dirty money and make it clean. Make it matter." Jessica propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face. "You're serious?" "Completely. I'll handle the business. You'll handle making sure that business actually helps people. We'll be, what did you call it? A force for good, made from something dark." That's a lot of responsibility. You can handle it. You threw a tire iron at an armed man and triggered an electrical fire to save my life. I think you can handle a non-profit." She laughed, then sobered. "What about Vincent? What happens to him?" "He'll be arraigned tomorrow. Federal charges: attempted murder, arson, conspiracy. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison." Celso's expression was complicated. "But it'll be a good prison. Safe, clean. I'll make sure he has books, visitors if he wants them, medical care. It's not forgiveness. But it's not revenge either. It's mercy. It's what you taught me. That being powerful means choosing what to do with that power." He pulled her back down, holding her close. "Stay with me forever, Jessica. Help me be the man Sophia would have been proud to know. The man you saw in me before I saw it myself." Jessica pressed her ear to his chest, listening to his heartbeat steady, strong, alive. "Forever's a long time." "Not long enough." And wrapped in his arms, in the penthouse overlooking the city that had tried to break them both, Jessica finally understood what home felt like. Not a place, not safety, but the person who chose you even when you gave them every reason not to. She'd come to New York with nothing but debt and dreams. She was leaving that version of herself behind and becoming something new, something whole, something loved. 3 months later, Jessica stood in front of floor-to-ceiling windows in what used to be just Celso's office and was now technically theirs, watching the sunset paint Manhattan in shades of gold and fire. So much had changed. Vincent was serving 25 to life in a federal facility upstate. The trafficking network that had used Celso's warehouse had been completely dismantled. 17 arrests, 43 victims recovered and placed in protective care. The story had made national news, with Celso positioned as the businessman who'd cooperated with federal investigators to bring down a criminal enterprise. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Behind her, she heard the door open. Celso's footsteps, she'd learned to recognize them, the confident stride of a man who owned everything he walked on. "You're brooding," he said, coming to stand beside her. "I'm thinking. There's a difference. Dangerous either way." His hand found hers, their fingers interlacing automatically. "The lawyers finalized the foundation paperwork. We're officially a 501c3 as of 4 o'clock this afternoon." Jessica turned to look at him. He was in a suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, but he'd loosened his tie. The Celso she'd met 3 months ago would never have allowed himself that small informality. This Celso, the one she was helping him become, was learning that perfection was exhausting. "How much did you put in the initial endowment?" she asked. $50 million. She blinked. "That's not enough. I know. But it's a start." He pulled her closer. "You'll build it into something bigger, something that actually changes things." "We'll build it," she corrected. "I'm not doing this alone." "No, you're not." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Which brings me to what I wanted to talk to you about." Jessica's heart stopped. "Celso. Before you panic, this isn't a ring. Well, it is a ring, but not that kind of ring. Yet." He opened the box to reveal a simple platinum band with an inscription inside. She couldn't read from this angle. "I had this made for you. Read it." She took the box with shaking hands, tilting it to catch the light. The inscription read, "Co-Executive Director, Loggia Enterprises, Partner, Conscience, Light." "I don't understand," she whispered. "I'm making it official, not just the foundation, everything. The legitimate businesses, the real estate holdings, the investments." He turned her to face him fully. "I want you as my co-executive director. Equal authority, equal decision-making power. Your name on every contract, every deed, every board." "That's Celso, that's insane. I don't have experience running." "You have something better than experience. You have integrity, vision, the ability to see through bullshit and make people accountable." His hands framed her face. "I've spent 3 months watching you transform the foundation from an idea into something real. You've hired staff, built programs, created partnerships with organizations I didn't even know existed. You've done in 3 months what most people couldn't do in 3 years. That's different from running a business empire. Is it? You're managing budgets, negotiating with stakeholders, making strategic decisions that affect hundreds of people. He smiled. You're already doing the job, Jessica. I'm just asking you to make it official. To be my partner in everything, not just the parts that feel comfortable. Jessica looked down at the ring. It was beautiful, simple, elegant, powerful, the kind of jewelry that made a statement without screaming. What's the catch? She asked. The catch is that you'll be legally tied to me, to my empire, to everything I've built, both the legitimate parts and the complicated parts. His expression turned serious. I can't erase my past, can't pretend I'm not still connected to people and operations that exist in gray areas. If you do this, you're choosing to stand beside me knowing exactly what that means. I've been standing beside you for 3 months. This changes nothing except the paperwork. It changes everything. It means you're not just my girlfriend, you're my business partner, my co-conspirator, he took a shaky breath, my conscience and my light. The person who keeps me from becoming what I was before you walked into my life. Jessica felt tears prick her eyes. You can't put that responsibility on me. I'm not. You're exactly that. You always have been. He took the ring from the box and held it out. I'm not asking you to save me. I'm asking you to build something with me. Something that honors Sophia. That helps people like you, who survived systems designed to break them. That proves money and power can be used for more than just accumulating more money and power. She looked at the ring, at him, at the city spreading out behind him, the city that had almost destroyed her, that she was now being offered the chance to help reshape. I have conditions, she said. Celso's smile was pure relief. Name them. The foundation gets priority. Always. If there's ever a conflict between profit and helping people, we choose people. Agreed. We establish a scholarship program, full rides to Columbia for foster kids who want to study psychology, social work, anything that helps them help others. Done. And we make it public. Not just the foundation, all of it. We hold press conferences. We testify before Congress if we have to. We make trafficking prevention and victim support a national conversation, and we use your name, your reputation, your resources to force people to pay attention. Celso's expression shifted to something like awe. You want to make me the face of anti-trafficking efforts. I want to make us the face of it. Together. She held out her hand. So yes, I'll be your co-executive director, your partner, your conscience, all of it. He slipped the ring onto her finger right hand, not left, because this wasn't about marriage, this was about partnership, about choosing each other in the most public, legally binding way possible. There's one more thing, Celso said. Of course there is. He pulled a second box from his pocket. This one she recognized immediately, the size, the shape. Her heart started hammering again. I told you the first ring wasn't that kind of ring, he said, opening it to reveal a diamond that probably cost more than most houses. This is that kind of ring. And before you say it's too soon, before you tell me we've only known each other for 3 months, before you logic your way out of this, just listen. Jessica couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I've loved you since you told me to go to hell. I'll love you until the day I die. I want to marry you. Want to make you Jessica Loggia and watch you turn my name into something that means hope instead of fear. His voice went rough. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want to build this empire, this foundation, this life with you. So Jessica Gibbs, fearless waitress who saved my soul, will you marry me? She should say it was too fast. Should demand time to think, to process, to be rational. Instead, she said, yes. Celso's smile was incandescent. He slipped the engagement ring onto her left hand, then pulled her into a kiss that tasted like champagne and promises, and the future they were building together. When they broke apart, he moved to his desk and pulled out a bottle of Cristal Brut 2013, the exact champagne he'd demanded that first night. "I've been saving this," he said, popping the cork, "for when you finally said yes to everything." Everything? The partnership, the foundation, the marriage, the empire. He poured 2 glasses, handed her one. "The life we're going to build where your courage and my resources combine into something that actually matters." Jessica looked at her ring, both of them, the platinum band and the diamond, and felt something shift in her chest. She'd come to New York with nothing. Had been fired, blacklisted, reduced to survival mode. And now she stood in a penthouse overlooking the city, wearing rings that symbolized not just love but power, not just partnership but purpose. "To Sophia," she said, raising her glass, "and to making sure her story ends with something good." Celso's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "To Sophia. And to you, Jessica, my conscience, my light, my salvation." They drank, and the champagne was perfect. Not too cold, not sent back, not thrown against walls. Just perfect. Later, as they stood at the windows watching the city light up like a constellation, Celso's arms around her waist, Jessica thought about the woman she'd been 3 months ago. Exhausted, broke, invisible. That woman would never have believed this was possible. But that woman had also dared a mafia boss to try her, had thrown a tire iron at an armed man, had chosen courage over survival, partnership over safety, love over fear. "What are you thinking?" Celso murmured against her hair. "That I should probably send a thank you note to my old manager." "For what?" "For not stopping you from firing me." She turned in his arms, smiling up at him. "Best thing that ever happened to me." Celso laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound she was still getting used to hearing. "You're insane. So are you. That's why this works." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "I love you, Jessica Gibbs, soon-to-be Loggia. Thank you for not running when any sane person would have. Thank you for being worth staying for." And wrapped in his arms, with 2 rings on her fingers and an empire at her feet, Jessica finally understood what she'd been searching for her entire life. Not safety, not stability, not even love, though that was part of it. Purpose. The chance to take her pain, her survival, her hard-won wisdom, and use it to help others survive too. She'd told a mafia boss, "Don't you dare me," and he dared her to change the world. So she would. They would. Together. 6 months later. The gala was everything Jessica had envisioned: elegant, powerful, and impossible to ignore. The ballroom at the plaza was filled with Manhattan's elite, all of them writing checks to the Sophia Caruso Foundation for trafficking prevention and victim support. Politicians, CEOs, celebrities. Even the mayor had shown up. Jessica stood at the podium in a deep emerald gown, her engagement ring catching the light as she gestured to the presentation behind her. "This year alone, we've rescued 47 victims, provided housing and counseling to over 200 survivors, and successfully lobbied for 3 pieces of federal legislation. But we're just getting started." The applause was thunderous. She caught Celso's eye from where he stood at the side of the stage, and his smile, private, proud, entirely hers, made her heart skip. They'd done it. Turned his guilt and her courage into something that actually mattered. As she left the stage, a reporter from the Times intercepted her. "Miss Gibbs, there are rumors that you and Mr. Loggia are planning to expand the foundation internationally. Can you confirm?" "We're exploring opportunities in Eastern Europe," Jessica said carefully, "where trafficking networks are particularly entrenched." "And is it true you'll be traveling there personally?" "Some people are saying that's dangerous for someone in your position." Jessica's smile didn't waver. "I've never been afraid of danger when there's important work to be done." 2 hours later, after the guests had left and the checks had been collected, $4.7 million in a single night, Jessica and Celso returned to the penthouse. She kicked off her heels immediately, sighing in relief. "Remind me why I thought 5-inch heels were a good idea," she groaned. "Because you look devastating in them." Celso was already loosening his bow tie, heading for the bar. "Whiskey? God?" "Yes." He poured 2 glasses, but as he turned to bring her one, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor changed. The relaxation vanished, replaced by the cold, controlled mask she rarely saw anymore. "What is it?" Jessica asked, immediately alert. Celso didn't answer, just pulled up something on his phone and stared at it, his jaw tightening. "Celso, what's wrong?" He turned the phone to show her. It was a photograph, grainy, clearly taken from a distance. It showed a young woman, maybe 19 or 20, with dark hair and familiar eyes. She was chained to a radiator in what looked like an abandoned building, bruised, terrified, and she looked exactly like Sofia Caruso. Jessica's blood ran cold. "That's not possible. Sofia is dead." "I know." Celso's voice was flat. "I saw her body. I paid for her funeral. Vincent identified her." "Then who is this?" "I don't know." He swiped to the next image. It was a note, typed in simple text. "You took my daughter, now I have yours. Prague, 3 days. Come alone or she dies like Sofia should have, a ghost from your past." Jessica read it twice, her mind racing. "Vincent is in prison. This can't be." "It's not Vincent." Celso was already moving, pulling up encrypted files on his laptop. "Vincent only had 1 daughter, but the trafficking ring we dismantled, it was bigger than we thought. There were partners, people we never identified." His hands were shaking as he typed. "Someone thinks I have a daughter. Someone wants revenge badly enough to kidnap an innocent girl and send me to Prague. It's a trap. Obviously. You can't go." Celso looked at her, and in his eyes she saw the same guilt, the same self-loathing that had consumed him 3 years ago when Sofia died. "If there's even a chance this girl is real, if someone took her because of me, then we call the FBI. Interpol. We use legal channels. In 3 days? They'll kill her before any agency can mobilize." He slammed the laptop shut. "I have to go." "Then I'm coming with you." "Absolutely not. We're partners, remember? Co-executive directors. You don't get to shut me out when things get dangerous." Jessica moved closer, grabbing his arms. "Besides, you need me. Whoever this is, they're expecting you to come alone, expecting you to be predictable. But I'm not predictable. I'm the advantage they won't see coming." "Jessica, don't you dare me, Celso." She used his own words against him. "Because we both know how that ends. I win. Every time." For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then, despite everything, despite the threat, despite the fear, despite the ghost from his past reaching across an ocean to destroy him, he smiled. "We're going to Prague," he said. "We're going to Prague," she confirmed. He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. "This could be the thing that finally breaks us. Or it could be the thing that proves we're unbreakable." Jessica pulled back, her expression fierce. "Either way, we face it together. That's what partners do." Celso kissed her hard, desperate, a man acknowledging he might be walking into his own destruction and choosing to do it anyway. When they broke apart, Jessica moved to his laptop, already pulling up flight schedules and encrypted communication channels. 3 days, she said. "We'll need weapons, documents, local contacts." She looked at him. "And we need to figure out who's angry enough, powerful enough, and crazy enough to declare war on Celso. Celso came to stand beside her, his hand finding hers. "Whatever we find in Prague, we handle it. Together." Jessica squeezed his hand. "That's the deal. Remember?" "I remember." Outside the windows, Manhattan glittered like a promise. Or a threat. In 3 days, they would board a plane to Prague. In 3 days, they would walk into a trap set by someone who wanted Celso destroyed. In 3 days, everything they'd built, the foundation, the empire, the life they'd fought so hard to create, would be tested in ways neither of them could predict. But tonight, they had each other. And sometimes, that was enough. In Prague, someone was watching the same photograph, smiling. Come find her, Celso Logia. Come face the sins you thought you'd buried. And bring your beautiful partner. I have plans for her too. To be continued in Don't Dare Me Twice. The Prague Deception.